Hey everyone. Decided to make this video because I was doing some browsing on YouTube and saw some really bad explanations of the 4% rule. It's surprising how many people are talking about the 4% rule, yet have no idea how it actually works. Okay, maybe it's not, but still. You guys know you don't have to make a video about something if you don't really know how it works, right? Right? Now, there are lots of bad examples to choose from, but this guy had close to 250,000 views, so unfortunately for him, he's getting my attention today. Let's check out this clip.
The 4% rule is actually what dictates us to be able to take out 4% of whatever this retirement account is without actually touching the principal. So we're living off of 4% every year, and that's getting replenished every year.
Did you catch that? I know it was quick. He said that following the 4% rule, you never have to touch your principal. Basically, he's saying,
No! No!
unfortunately, however, this is wrong. Like, not even a little bit right. I'll spare you watching the rest of the video, but he seems to be under the impression that the 4% rule is saying that if you can earn 6 to 10% while just taking 4% out of your portfolio each year, then you can take out 4%, give yourself a 2% inflation increase per year, and never touch your principal. There's so much wrong with this that I honestly don't even know where to start, but let's just play out a hypothetical that should make this clear. Let's say you retire with $1 million, which, according to the 4% rule, would mean that you could take a first-year distribution of $40,000. Let's keep things simple and assume that we're taking this all out at the beginning of the year, bringing your portfolio down to $960,000. Oh, shoot, did we just? We did, didn't we? We just touched the principal. Sorry, Mr. Whiteboard. We started with $1 million, we're down to 960,000. That's touching the principal. And it works the exact same, even if you're taking income monthly and not assuming the whole year's spending is coming out on day one. Now, as the video progresses, he's doing some odd mental gymnastics where he's looking at the portfolio values at the end of the year, noting that they were larger than at the beginning of the year, and then claiming that as a result, you didn't touch your principal. Again, that's not correct, just to be clear. But let's grant him the benefit of the doubt here and use this sort of odd conception of being up at the end of the year and therefore implying you don't have to touch your principal. Okay, so it's day one of the first year of retirement. We took out our $40,000 and now the portfolio is down to $960,000. Now, the scenarios he gives in the video work out because he's always assuming positive portfolio growth. But let's instead assume that, as is often the case in real world markets, our portfolio actually declines 5% this year, meaning our $960,000 at the beginning of the year is now worth $912,000 at the end of the year. What exactly is he proposing we would do here? Just survive without spending anything until our portfolio is back at the $1 million level? Good luck with that. Fortunately, you can ignore everything he said because it's just not right. Unfortunately, it's actually okay to spend your principal while following the 4% rule. So if that's not the 4% rule, then what is the 4% rule? The 4% rule comes from a famous study published in the Journal of Financial Planning by Bill Bengen. Bengen used a method called historical simulation, where he's essentially simulating people going through historical 30-year retirement periods using US market data. In these simulations, our hypothetical retirees experience market returns that actually occurred historically, and they get true inflation adjustments to their annual spending based on the Consumer Price Index, or CPI. Then we solve for the maximum amount our hypothetical retiree could have spent without depleting their portfolio for each possible starting year within the data. The final step is to look at all these maximum values and find the lowest among them. This lowest maximum value is what's known as the safe withdrawal rate. And it turns out the safe withdrawal rate in Bengen's study ended up being 4%. So essentially, we're solving for what someone could have spent in the worst historical scenario and still made it through retirement without depleting their portfolio. It's important to note, however, that in the process of finding the safe withdrawal rate, we are running the portfolio down to $0. We are assuming that, at least in the worst historical scenario, not only was someone spending down their principal, but they were spending down their entire principal. If you were a retiree following the 4% rule and retired during the worst historical sequence, if you happen to live past 30 years in retirement, you are out of money. Now, another big misunderstanding about the 4% rule is that many people think it means they would take 4% out of their portfolio each year, recalculating that number based on whatever has happened in the market. So if their $1 million portfolio grew to 1.1 million, then they would take 1.1 million, multiply by 4%, and now take out $44,000. But that's also not correct, or at least not what the 4% rule is saying. The 4% rule that's commonly cited refers to the initial safe withdrawal rate. It's only on day one of retirement that you actually calculate this 4%. Beyond that point, Bangen's study was giving retirees true inflation increases based on the consumer price index each and every year. In fact, if you were to recalculate your 4% every year, it would actually be mathematically impossible to run out of money because your distributions would be declining in proportion to the portfolio decline, and you simply never could fully deplete a portfolio this way. But that's not what Bangen wanted to look at. He didn't want to look at variable or flexible spending strategies like this. What he was interested in was how much you could initially spend if you kept your standard of living perfectly consistent, regardless of what happened in the market. So what the safe withdrawal rate of 4% ends up representing is the absolute worst time in recorded U.S. history that you could have retired and lived through a 30-year retirement period, giving yourself inflation increases along the way. You can actually verify this all for yourself. Robert Schiller, a professor of economics at Yale University, maintains some publicly available data sets that you can download. His annual data series that contains long-term stock, bond, interest rate, and consumption data since 1871 contains all the data you would need to make your own safe withdrawal rate calculator. But back to the 4% rule itself, it's crucially important to note that in many of the historical scenarios, you would be touching your principal at some point in time. Now, what's also true is that since the 4% rate is the worst historical sequence we've seen, it turns out that most scenarios were actually much better. Historically speaking, initial withdrawal rates of 5, 6, even 7% often work out just fine. We've even seen some of the best cases in history where the initial safe withdrawal rate is much higher than that. But please, do not think that the 4% rule makes you immune from spending down your principal. What the 4% rule tells us is that in the worst historical scenario, a 4% distribution rate essentially totally depleted a portfolio, principal and all, by the end of a 30-year retirement period. If you were that retiree and you actually lived 31 years in retirement, you would have been in a very tough situation had you not made adjustments along the way. Now, all that said, I wouldn't actually use the 4% rule in the first place. There's so many issues with the 4% rule, and we could truly do much better. If you're looking for a simple, intuitive explanation, just consider this chart here, which my co-author, Justin Fitzpatrick, and I coined the retirement distribution hatchet. What this is showing is the common scenario where someone retires before age 70, but delays claiming Social Security until age 70. This creates the blade of the hatchet, where the distribution rates are initially greater, followed by an eventual reduction in the distribution rate once Social Security kicks in. I'm personally a fan of risk-based guardrails, which I'll link to an article on that framework below. But today, really just want to make this video and set the record straight on spending down principal using the 4% rule. Please do not think that the 4% rule makes you immune from spending out principal. It does nothing of the such. I hope you found this useful. If you did, please like and subscribe. And if you've got a question you want answered, leave it below, and I may feature it in a future video. Thanks for listening, everyone.